The circle of forest is just that, a circle. About 750 feet in diameter, it's not particularly big. It is ringed by 2 meters of grassless rock, and then beyond that is the wilderness. Moss and fern and cliff and weeds. The trees and plants that grow inside the circle are thick and strange. It's raining this evening. I sit in my little hut with a mug of warm tea as the rain batters and clatters against the roof. It leaks through in one corner and drips quickly down into a bucket I've placed there. My rifle rests against my leg. My hut has a direct view to the centerpiece of the forest. A dark, cave-like hole in the middle of a clearing descending down and into the unknown. I tried to go through it once, but my head began to pound the deeper I went down. To the point of agony, actually, and I was forced to retreat. I don't go down there anymore. Not much point to it. My colleague joins me tonight. He sips from a mug of his own. "Ah," he says with a pleasant smile. "Delicious. Nothing like a warm mug on a cold day." "Mm-hmm," I reply, scratching my beard. "What do you think might be coming up tonight?" He asks. Who could tell? Nothing, hopefully. "It's been a while since the last one," he murmurs. "We're overdue a visitor." Yes, I suppose we are," I sigh. Visitor is darkly comical way to refer to the things that clamber out of the hole. Coined because of how crushingly lonely it can get at this particular station. I've been here for 3 months now. Another 3 to go. But of course I have Robbie here with me tonight. Someone to talk to. I've missed him. The rain splashes through the leaves and into the undergrowth, and I take a final sip before setting the mug down onto the wooden little table with a low thunk. I rise to my feet. "Right, let's head a little closer, shall we?" He mutters, glancing out the doorway. "Into the rain?" "You know it, brother," he sighs. "Fine. Are we splitting up or sticking together this time?" "It's a no-brainer. We'll stick together," I tell him. I clap him on the shoulder and gesture for the man to head outside. "You know how I get lonely," he chuckles. "Right you are, man." And out he goes, rifle in hand. I hoist up my own and out I go. The water splashing against my hood and my shoulders as we push through the undergrowth and a little closer towards the hole. The reason for this little pursuit outdoors is the rain itself. It is unfortunately obscuring our view, and whilst on a clear day I might be content to just sit in the hut and wait for one of the sensors to trigger, I also don't fully trust the sensor's effectiveness in such weather. So out we go. The ferns brush up against my camo-clad legs as we approach the clearing, and we take our positions beside the best lookout trees. Robbie is a little off, though. "Hey," I say to him above the rush of the rain. He looks at me. "Wake up, man, you can be seen from there." "Back up a little." He chuckles and rubs his head. "Of course. Right you are." We settle down and we wait, and we watch as water pools and puddles around the hole in the ground ahead. It's surrounded by tumbled rock and stone, though I couldn't say where from. There isn't another rock of such size in the whole circle of forest. Perhaps someone moved them there long ago. It's another 20 minutes before anything stirs from the hole. Robbie and I just spend the time shooting the shit. "I just think you'd be so much happier if you quit this business, man," Robbie says to me, "being isolated for such long periods of time. It's not healthy." "How long you got left?" 3 months, I tell him. "So 6 months total. Half a year in such a place as this." Robbie shakes his head. "You need to be around people. Humans are social creatures." "Perhaps," I grunt. Robbie opens his mouth to say more, but I cut him off with a quick gesture, pointing to the hole. We both creep a little lower in our positions and watch as a shadow begins to shamble its way from the depths of the hole. The thing is covered in slime and chatters as it appears, armored, brown, and disgusting. 2 tiny beady eyes peer out as its antennae twitch and circle around. Its rows upon rows of sharp legs clatter over the rock and slice down into the wet grass and the mud. I feel a swell of revulsion rise up in my stomach. But it's okay. These types are always the easiest. I raise my rifle, Robbie does likewise, and the abomination is riddled with quick holes. Its shell and flesh bursting out into the undergrowth as it screeches in fury. I suppress a gag. "Disgusting," Robbie mutters. "Where the hell do these things even come from?" I don't bother responding. It's a question we've asked each other countless times over the years. I have my theories. From amidst the ruin of the centipede-like creature and out from the hole comes a deer. It raises its head and sniffs the air. I raise the rifle, and the deer bolts, bouncing and speeding away over the undergrowth. Fuck, I shout, hesitating as I look between the deer and my colleague. I point at him. Watch the damned hole. I'll be back. Yeah, chance would be a fine thing, but the deer is the priority for now. I take off between the trees after it. I raise the gun and fire, exploding a branch as I do so. The deer still hops speedily away. They aren't usually this fast, these things. I stumble after it, leaping over ferns and bushes, and the deer makes the mistake of turning sideways to try and ack away from me. I take the opportunity to raise the rifle to my shoulder, firing again, with a better chance of hitting, and this time I strike. Black fluid bursts from the deer's side and a strangled, decidedly non-deer-like noises escapes its throat as it crashes down to the ground with a rustle of ferns. I wipe the rain and sweat from my forehead and turn instantly back, chest rising and falling as I hastily return to the clearing. I approach from the opposite side this time, and I raise a hand to Robbie, but just as I expected, the man isn't looking. His interest is elsewhere, staring off into the woods. He rises to his feet. Robbie! I shout at him, and he swivels to look at me. Were you watching the hole? The man does not respond, and movement at the clearing's edge catches both our attentions. An anxious-looking man with a backpack and waterproof trousers shuffles out from between the trees, a crumpled map in one hand. Hello, he says, looking between Robbie and I. I raise my rifle at once, and Robbie does likewise. I begin making my way around the clearing's edge towards my colleague, barrel of the weapon fixed carefully on the stranger. What, hey, he says in alarm, putting up his hands. I don't understand, you guys are rangers, right? I'm not a poacher or anything like that. He forces out an awkward laugh. I'm just lost, honestly, I'm literally lost. And where are you from? I ask him, I'm sorry? The man replies, adjusting his glasses. I didn't realize I had an accent. A poor attempt at a joke. Another weak laugh. Tell me where you're from right now or I'll blow your head off. I tell the stranger plainly as I reach my position beside Robbie. Speak clearly. I'm from Obdebrand, the man mutters. What? I reply, jerking the rifle. I said speak clearly. Obdebrand, the man replies, raising his voice, the terror in his face quite evident. That isn't a real place, I tell him. What country? What damned country? It's this country, obviously. Please, this isn't funny, just let me go, all right? I'll find my own way, please. I exchange a look with Robbie. Tell me the name of any country, hiker. That's all I want to know. The man shakes where he stands as the rain pours down through the trees. He stutters and mutters, and eventually he manages to speak, though his words are a string of nonsense. I take quick aim and pull the trigger, and a hole appears in the center of the man's forehead. He drops like a brick as black fluid bursts and spurts from his face, his skin twitching and crawling as a massive insect-like leg bursts from his ribcage. I spit onto the ground. Jesus, Robbie murmurs. I consider chiding the man for allowing the creature through, but there's no point, really. So I let it go. The corpse twitches in the grass beneath the rain. Obdebrand, Robbie repeats. Do you think it's a real place? Or did he just make it up? A random combination of sounds? Who can say, man, I reply, shrugging. Your guess is as good as mine. Robbie says nothing further. We sit side by side and watch the hole for another 30 minutes. We are quieter this time, but still it's nice just to have his company. The rain falls. I gotta take a piss, man, Robbie says, breaking the silence. He clambers to his feet. Hey, well, don't go too far. Just piss right there, eh? I need you alert and active, my man. Just piss right there. Robbie hesitates and gives me a look before shaking his head. All right, man. I'll try not to turn around too fast. Wouldn't want to hit you with my dick and knock you out. I chuckle as he relieves himself against the tree, a chuckle which is quickly lost as a horde of shadowy beings begin scampering out of the hole. Action, Robbie. I tell him, quick, stay alert. The shadowy beings quickly take shape through the rain. They are all exact copies of myself. They don't make a break for the exit, they run to me. Fuck. Soldier! One of the copies shouts into my face, grabbing me by the shoulders. Jesus, thank God. You're alive! Right, come with us immediately. There's still time to get you to safety. I shove him away and raise the rifle. My copy stares at the barrel, then at me, and then swears and throws out his hands. Again? For fuck's sake! Why does he keep doing this? He turns to another of my copies and gives him a light shove in the chest. Why won't he just come back? What are we doing wrong? I choose not to partake in this little piece of theater. I take aim and fire, bursting a hole in my copy's neck. Initially, the blood is red, which is rather worrying, but it quickly runs black as he falls gasping to the floor. The other copies of myself all retreat in panic. There are 5 more of them. Robbie, one of them shouts, gesturing to my colleague. Tell him to come back already. We can't keep doing this. Robbie stutters and mutters, and I fire. The copy's head bursts open. Down he goes. 2 of the surviving copies attempt a hasty escape, back to the hole, which I find interesting, but not interesting enough to spare them. Down they go, one after the other. Bang, bang, 2 left now. They look at each other, and the closest holds out a hand to me. Listen, he says carefully as I reload. I know this seems impossible and scary, he's right. I'm fucking terrified, though I'm doing my best not to show it. These things really are getting creative, but you have to trust us on this, or at least hear us out, please. Do you have any idea how long you've been gone? The other copy shouts in anger. He's not going to listen, it's just like last time. The closest copy stares right into my eyes. I don't care what the others say, he tells me. I will never leave you behind. I swore it once, and it's a promise I intend to bang. I blow the imposter to kingdom come. His comrade panics and slips on the wet grass as he tries to run, and I gun him down. His lifeless body thuds to the ground, his skin twitching in various and unsettling places, as if being pressed or stretched from the inside. I put a couple of bonus bullets in him for good measure. Robbie looks over to me and studies my face. Are you good, man? He asks after a moment. Yeah, I reply, lying. Yep. I stare at the faces of my copies. Corpses now. I try not to dwell on it. I glance over to Robbie. Perhaps I've let this little charade go on for too long. Robbie pales and stares right past me at the hole. I turn to follow his gaze. 3 figures clamber out, one waving a white flag. Wait, one calls above the roar of the rain. I squint through it for a better look. Don't shoot. It's me again. Another copy, though this one is at least 2 decades older. A copy of Robbie is with him, similarly aged. A girl in her 30s walks with them, a fearful expression on her face and her hands raised. It's my daughter. A sick copy at the least, and aged up like the others. I throw my hands out, exasperated. What do you want? Listen to me, you fool. My elder copy shouts back. This is the real me. The real you, and this is the real Robbie, the real Robbie. He puts a hand on the copy of Robbie's shoulder and his other on my daughter's. She stares at me, wide-eyed. He looks so young, she says. She calls over. Dad, it's me. Do you remember? Please tell me you remember. Remember the trip we took to the beach? You took us to the coast on my 10th birthday. We saw dolphins. She reaches up to her neck and lifts a necklace with a smooth little shiny pebble attached. You let me keep this pebble, we had it turned into a necklace. Things are about to change, my copy says to me, walking ever closer. Things beyond your understanding, and the truths of this hole barely scratch the surface. It's a passage. I think you've realized this. A passage to places beyond and between. Sometimes to other planes, yes, but the tunnels run deep. They loop back around. He slams his hands to his chest. I'm babbling. I appreciate that this might not make any sense to you. But we are from the same loop. The same path, looped back around! I take a deep breath. I look this madman in the eyes. With the scent of the rain-washed pine and the drift of rifle smoke in my nose, I take aim and I fire. Bang! My so-called future self drops to the ground. My daughter screams, and the elder copy of Robbie drops to his knees at the corpse. No, no! He cries, and I take him out as well. The copy of my daughter is the hardest. Shaking where she stands, she turns to stare at me, defiant, daring me to shoot in cold silence. It doesn't have to be this way, she says, her voice wavering. I chew my tongue, and then I call her bluff. Bang! Down she goes. Just another leaking corpse. Robbie stares at the ruined bodies. The trees rustle in the rain as the blasts of the rifle ring in our ears. He looks to me. How do you do it? He murmurs. How the fuck do you it? I rub a sleeve across my eyes. Do not allow anything to escape, I tell him. It's a rule for a reason. You do it so easily, Ryan, he says quietly, the disgust in his voice quite clear. Is that what you think? I ask him. I turn to face him, my jaw set as the rain leaks from my chin. Tell me, Robbie. Tell me if what I am doing is wrong. Should I be letting these things and these abominations out into the world? And where do they come from exactly? If where they're coming from is so great, then why leave it all? If there's something worse that's pushing them away, then that's all the more incentive to just keep shooting. I don't know which one of these horrors is the worst, so better safe than sorry. What if they have something important to tell us? He asked me. Important? Fuck 'em. It's all tricks and lies. The second I let my guard down, I am lost. And speaking of which, I raise the rifle and point it at his head. He backs away. Wait, hold on. He laughs anxiously, then stops when he realizes that I am not kidding around. You've gone mad, he says simply. You've lost yourself in your head. It's me. It's Robbie. If the things that come out of the ground are benevolent, then why do they all lie, Robbie? Why do they lie? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do, my friend. I cock the rifle. I've enjoyed your company tonight, I really have. You were a strong imitation, I'll give you that. But you've missed a crucial piece of information. You always miss something. Robbie is dead, long dead. Died 2 years ago. He died defending the people of this place from an abomination that rose out of that yonder hole. So I'll be seeing you now. Robbie's face contorts into shock and surprise. Please, he begins, and I put a bullet through his forehead with a loud bang. He crumples. Down he goes. Just like the rest of them. That terrible black fluid pouring out and over the grass. Oversized, yet still only half-formed insect legs burst from his shoulders and neck, twitching in the rain. I lift my face to the sky and take a slow, deep breath. When Robbie first appeared to me this evening from through the trees, I was too surprised to react. It was a potentially fatal mistake. But for one reason or another, the copy did not use his rifle to shoot me. If he was going to use it to kill me, he could have done so in that very first instant. He didn't, so after that I just played along, keeping an eye on him. As I said, it gets real lonely up here, and I miss that man a great deal. The rain's letting up a little now. I watch as black sludge begins bubbling up from the hole's entrance, and I return to my hut, sitting down with a sigh in my chair as water drips from the branches and into the bucket beside me. The corpses will have melted away by morning. There won't be any more visitors tonight. The black sludge means that the tunnel needs time to recharge. I reach for my mug and take a slow sip of cold, miserable tea. 3 months down, 3 more to go. For about 10 years now, I've been a ranger in the Okefenokee Swamp Park. It's the largest blackwater swamp in the entire United States and takes up a good chunk of southeast Georgia. The place is massive, home to all kinds of wildlife from foxes to alligators to the occasional bear. Over the years, I've found that it's not only wildlife that inhabits these swamps, though. There's something else out here, not human, of course, but the swamp hides its fair share of secrets from the world beyond its waters. One of my earliest memories was during my first year as a junior ranger. I was young, maybe 25 or so when I got the job, and they were drip-feeding me new duties as the days went by. Eventually, I got to the point where I could do patrols myself, if there was anything that needed to be checked on. And they finally gave me the keys to the fan boats we would use to get into the deeper parts. That's what gave me my first scare. It was getting dark out, and some folks came into the station telling us they had been out hiking and lost one of their buddies. Not too uncommon, considering if you take a wrong turn, there's nothing but water and dense trees to find your way back. And unless you've got a keen eye, you're not going to notice the difference. Now the sun was going down, and they say they hadn't seen him in a few hours, despite calling out for him the entire way back, so it fell on me to go out there and search while Lena, my partner on duty, was the one to take the report. I grabbed the big-ass flashlight we use for night searches, the boat keys, and headed out the door to see what I could find. They said they had come from the western part of the swamp, a more densely wooded region prone to a lot of flooding. Not a great thing right now as the clouds were coming out for a thunderstorm yet again. Moonlight was in and out, sliding behind clouds and plunging me into darkness every few minutes before re-emerging again for brief illumination whenever it felt like it. The trees above were casting eerie shadows, and every movement from around me made me jump as the night grew darker. Mosquitoes were the worst damn thing out here. Plenty of the bastards were swarming me, almost blocking the floodlight as they swirled around in the beam. It was hard enough seeing anything tyro the shadows of the trees out here, But seeing millions of tiny bugs make shadows the size of dogs in the distance, that does some weird shit to your brain. The heat didn't help much either, making my clothes stick to my sweaty skin. I was out there maybe 2 hours, moon high overhead and sun long gone now, when the first shower finally came. Rain started falling slow at first, just a drop here and there as thunder gave ominous rumbles in the background. An occasional flash of lightning would overtake my surroundings, completely overpowering the beam of my flashlight and making the entire swamp around visible. That was when I first started to notice them. It looked like people at first, hiding behind trees, obscured in shadows and branches to keep from being seen. Some were taller than others, some a bright sun-bleached white, while others appeared covered in mold and dirt. The first one I barely caught in the light as it ducked back behind a tree, long white fingers on one hand being the only thing I saw before they slipped back into the darkness behind it. I saw another one 10 minutes later, though this one was much more clear. It was in the middle of the trees, partially submerged in some of the water and muck below. From the waist up, there was a mostly decayed body, stripped by the bugs and weather down to the bone already, ribs holding rotten ribbons of flesh on them. It disappeared as quickly as my light hit it, one rotting eye still staring at me from its skull as it submerged under the water, leaving me shaking in fear. Despite trying to get a message back to Lena, I didn't have any signal going through on my walkie. I was finally around the space where they said they had lost their friend, and I started yelling for him despite how scared shitless I was. Everything I had seen up to that point I was able to just rationalize, I guess. It was my first time out in the swamp on my own, especially this late at night, and the weather wasn't helping my nerves. Ahead of me, the trees opened up in a clearing, nothing but a small pond unmarred by roots or trunks sticking through. The rain stopped suddenly, moon appearing from behind the clouds now and shining down on the dark black water below, reflecting its light. There, standing in the middle of the clearing with hands stretched high into the sky, as if pleading for the moon to come down and meet it, was a body. Hell, a body was probably putting it mildly, as this thing was stripped of all flesh, empty sockets where the eyes should be as it stared up into the moon above. From where I was in the boat, I could see it was dressed in a long flowing white gown, almost like a wedding dress. I couldn't tell if it was looking in longing, reverence, or both as it reached further toward the moon. It was standing atop the water's surface as if it was a smooth glass floor, not even making ripples across the water as it was glowing in the moonlight beneath her. As I was watching, more skeletons and decaying bodies emerged from the water, gliding upward to surround the skeletal bride as she continued reaching for the moon above. They grabbed her, dragging her back down below the surface of the water as the moon was once more hidden by clouds above. I tried shining my floodlight over to see if there was anything still there, but the clearing was completely empty, just shadows dancing off the water's surface again. I turned tail and ran that night. We ended up finding the guy that was missing the next day, somehow wandered right over to one of the nearby highways, though it was a hell of a walk for him to get there. Lena didn't believe me when I told her about the skeletons and decaying bodies in the water, simply looking at me like I was absolutely insane. A year or so later, we were the unlucky site of a murder. Or at least it was initially called a murder. Some poor girl's body was found floating in one of the more touristy areas, totally drained of every damn drop of blood. All they were able to find was one puncture wound in between her neck and shoulder. That wasn't from any animal known to be in the park. So Georgia Bureau of Investigations came in to look around. I got paired up to lead a guy named Sully around the swamps, investigating to see if we could find any sign of where she was killed or a possible weapon even. Good guy. We ended up getting to be friends in the couple of weeks we were going around the whole length of the Okefenokee. One thing we agreed on: the amount of destruction being done to the environment out here needed to stop. There was a mining operation about to start nearby, extracting lithium through strip mines right outside of the damn swamp borders. That was just the latest issue too, because a few of the major train yards had been dumping chemicals for the last few decades that was just now coming to light. God knows it added to the cancer clusters that have been popping up in the youth around here, taking kids way too damn young. What we found one night, though, almost a week after beginning our investigation, made us both see that the problems were only going to get worse. Another body had turned up a day earlier, causing a whole other fuss as GBI was still trying to get a handle on the situation. This was a big guy, too. They matched him up with a trucker that had gone missing a couple of weeks ago, big rig found empty and abandoned on the side of the highway nearby. His body was pretty messed up, decay setting in, but he had a similar wound with the same telltale sign. His body was absolutely drained of blood. Sully and I spent the next day tracking deep into the swamp, trying to figure out where it could have come from based on the faint currents through the waters. After about 7 hours of tracking from sunup, we found something. A shallow clearing in the middle of the northeast quadrant, tons of trees clustered around it that kept it mostly closed off. But a small gap between that became a floodgate essentially when it rained. We theorized that was what was letting the bodies loose, allowing them to drift over to the more populated areas of the swamp where they would be found. Our theory was somewhat backed up almost immediately, and we definitely found the origin point of the dead people. Inside this clearing, bodies were piled up in various states of decay. Every single one was drained of blood, the newest corpse probably being only a few days old at most. Alabaster white skin was glowing against the dark waters, making me feel nauseated in the humid afternoon. The whole area smelled of death, with the bodies adding on to the decay from rotting trees and vegetation. It was worse than the time I found a rotting bear near the park entrance. Poor bastard, almost torn in half by a car that hit him. They all had the same puncture wound, though it was on different sides for some of the bodies, probably just wherever the killer was able to get a good angle in. Sully pulled out his radio to make a call back to the station, letting them know what we had found. Unfortunately, they said it was going to be a bit before more people could come out thanks to an emergency in town. The downside of living in the rural South is there are only so many resources spread thin over a huge area. We would just have to set up and wait for someone to come out here. But in the meantime, we had our own plan. In the off chance the killer returned, we parked our boat a little ways away downstream, anchoring it to a nearby tree out of sight. Then we got out, waders and boots on to keep from getting totally soaked as we made our way back toward the small clearing. The sun was getting low, and we knew we would have to take a position soon to make sure nothing took us by surprise. There was a little luck on our side, though, because one of the old ranger outposts was nearby, a small rotting cabin built up on rickety platforms. We crammed ourselves in, getting ready for what could be a long night. Maybe 2 hours passed with nothing. I think I ended up falling asleep on one of the rusty folding chairs left in the outpost. The place was bare, an old landline phone hanging on one wall, a small desk in the corner, and one dingy light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Damn thing didn't even work, and there probably wasn't any power coming in here anyway. Sully got outside and looked around for a little bit while I was snoozing inside, and when he woke up showed me the reason we didn't have power. The small post stringing wire along for electricity was ripped out of the ground, nothing but a frayed wire still hanging loose above the water. No doubt that was a major safety hazard, but it's not like anyone ever came out this far. We started checking the further reaches of the swamp a lot more often after this situation, hoping to avoid another pile of bodies coming up like it did. The sun was gone in the sky by the time we realized our serial killer was much, much worse than some awful human. Sully had a fancy pair of night binoculars, and we were trading off back and forth watching the spot to see if anyone was coming. Hell, we were scanning the entire damn area, desperately trying to see anyone coming up before they actually got too close. That way we could get a better look. Our worst fear was that they would come up to their dumping spot with another body to get rid of, probably drained of blood again. Of course, that was a confirmed reality just a few minutes after midnight. Nobody had shown up out here still, with the two of us debating throwing down a GPS marker and heading back to the main station. I was on watch scanning the area from left to right when suddenly there was a figure standing in the clearing. Damn thing was huge, standing probably 9 feet tall at least. It was holding another body, likely drained as well because it flung it next to a tree moments after I caught sight, making it crumple to the water below. I grabbed Sully, pointing in the direction of the clearing and handing him the binoculars to get a look. His gasps were something I'll never forget, because the thing turned right toward us there. This giant bastard was like Mothman's fucked up southern cousin, bristles of stiff spines all along its arms and legs, with at least 6 arms sprouting down the body. 2 ended in sharp points, which we initially though was what it used to kill its victims. The others had human-like hands, though the fingers were deadly sharp at their tips. Then it looked to the body it had just thrown aside, something unfurling from its face. The huge red eyes were glowing in the moonlight, hexic patterns reflecting everything around it. As the mouth stretched, I realized it was a sharp, needle-like beak that it then punctured the fresh body with. I couldn't tell what it was doing, but the body started to shiver, something squirming through the still skin as it made itself inward. That was all me and Sully needed to see, because we had no idea what the hell this thing was other than an abomination against God. The situation with a believed murderer meant we got clearance to carry firearms, and both of us drew ours now. Sully had a rifle, while I just had a standard-issue pistol. We gave ourselves a moment to prepare, grabbing a couple of old flares from within the desk in case they might come in handy, and moved out. We made it to the edge of the clearing, still hidden from this damn thing and whatever it was doing. As Sully poked his barrel around the corner, waiting for the right moment, the damned thing turned and locked its giant red eyes with mine. It wasn't human for sure, and the only thing behind those eyes was the desire to feed, breed, and eat some more. This was the stereotypical southern pest, made into one of my greatest fucking nightmares. Soon as it looked at us, Sully fired a shot off, hitting it in one arm. The damned thing took off flying, both of us firing shots up after it. I think one of our shots found the right mark, because it shot through one of the wings, causing it to lose lift and start falling back down. I fired again, this time hitting it on the lower jaw, taking out the massive needle of a mouth. One more shot and we could take this thing out. My clip was empty, and when I went to reload, the mosquito man rushed at us, making me fumble the new clip into the dark water. The creature hit Sully, sending him flying backwards before splashing down into the muck behind us. I started to run back towards the outpost, picking Sully up as I went. He had lost his gun when he was thrown, meaning we were shit out of luck when it came to defenses. As we hauled ourselves up onto the outpost platform, I uncapped one of the flares, throwing it at the lumbering creature now wading towards us. It didn't handle the deeper water well, despite the great height advantage it had, and was struggling to pull its feet from the muck below. As we got inside, Sully slammed the door behind us, pulling the deadbolt which snapped from rust. It was only a moment before a loud thump shook the entire outpost, the creature landing on the platform outside. There was nothing we could do but press ourselves to the back wall, hoping that it might lose interest and leave. Now would have been an awesome time for some of the others to show up like they were supposed to hours ago, but no such luck there. One of the sharp arms busted through the thin wooden door, tearing a piece out as it was pulled back. The thing was coming in now, forcing itself through the small doorway while tearing the wooden panels out from the door and wall. There was little chance for us to get away, but we had to try at least. I opened up the shutter over the back window, exposing a dingy pane of glass roughly half my size. I pulled my arm back, smashing it with my elbow to get out and pulling Sully out with me as the creature got closer in the outpost. Uncapping the last flare, I threw it into the window behind me, letting the bright flame ignite the old, rotting wood inside. We clambered back, trying to make our way from behind the outpost back to our boat before the thing got out. The scream that damn thing let out is something I'll never forget, sounding like dozens of voices crying out at once as the flames licked at its skin. I saw the window burst outward, wall around it being blasted out with flames reaching closer to us. The creature fell out, body half on fire and sizzling as it fell from the platform and hit the water below. We had to get out, water splashing up through my waders at this point and chilling me in the humid air. I could see blue sparks coming a few feet away in the darkness. The live wire on a post that Sully had pointed out earlier. The idea was a risky one, but if it meant I could at least take the bastard out with me, I'd try it. It was gurgling up from the water now, clumsily sloshing its way toward us in the dark water. Nothing was going to stop the bastard, but I made my way as quickly as I could over to the post. My waders were made of rubber, so I hoped this half-baked scheme would work. As the thing got closer, I reached out, grabbing onto it and using its own offbeat momentum to swing it around to the other side of me. It landed right on target, face first into the live wire. I felt a brief shock as my hands let go of its body, noticing smoke rising from it as it convulsed atop the post. A couple of moments passed before the wire shorted out, creature going limp against Tay-post as it died. The outpost was still going up in flames around us as we both lifted the body, bringing it toward the massive pyre. It became that thing's funeral when we threw it on top, letting it burn away before it had any chance to pull some shit and come back at us. There was no sound from it, just the crackling of flames as the outpost burned, smoke rising into the sky above. Screams started coming from the clearing, this time more high-pitched than the last, but all in a terrible discordance that sounded like the choir of hell. We covered our ears, looking back to the clearing as the moonlight illuminated 3 small bodies, each one maybe 3 or 4 feet tall. One of them took to the air, massive needle mouth extending under the glowing red eyes. This fucking thing was nesting its eggs in the dead bodies, reproducing. I went back to the boat, grabbing the flare gun and a can of gasoline while Sully made his way to the small ones. They didn't put up much of a fight, thankfully, and he was able to crush them relatively easy underfoot. We started moving every body we found, piling them in the driest place we could before dousing them in gasoline. When they were soaked, we went back to the boat, carefully aiming the flare gun at the pile through the clearing before pulling the trigger. Every body in that pile went up that night. I still don't know who all of them were, and it's likely their poor families may never get closure, but after seeing what that thing had nested in them, I think we did them a service burning the bodies. Sully and I both gave the same report, though GBI didn't seem to believe it. Every time we've talked about it since we've wondered it was just some freak of nature cryptid or a mutant abomination made by the pollution taking hold. My bet is on the pollution. Chemicals probably getting into the mosquito spawn and making, well, these bastards. We've made it a point when any bodies come up in the swamp now to watch them for a few days, making sure they don't reproduce into more of the damned things. Despite how terrifying it could be out here, there were times when the supernatural stuff could be oddly beautiful. There's a pretty common phenomenon that I still don't really know if it's real or something more beyond outworld, but I've seen it enough to know that it's not entirely normal. Swamp lights small, floating torches in the dark that move of their own accord through the air. Some say they're called ball lightning. Others believe that it's some combination of gas and heat in the air. Those of us in the ranger station have realized it's something a little more than that. This was something we would see probably every other week. Just faint glows in the distance from our outpost or even along the tree lines while we were out on patrol. There was no telling where they would turn up, but we knew if they were out there we had some searching to do. Every time a swamp light popped up floating above the water, it was like a beacon guiding us to something. That something was unfortunately usually a body of someone who got lost or just wandered into the wrong area. They're not even terrifying, but more just sad. Every time we would see one, it was a sign to get out the nets and drag the water. Granted, that wasn't always the case, and we think some were just stray spirits left to wander, unable to move on even after their bodies were taken for burial. I think they got lonely sometimes too, just floating out there in search of someone, something, to actually acknowledge that they were once there. One night when I was out on the main station platform, I looked off into the trees to see what almost looked like Christmas lights blinking in and out, but way larger than any of the fireflies that were out here. That sent a bad feeling down my spine, hoping that I wasn't about to stumble upon a mass grave or anything. The lights were just there though, zipping over the water and, if I'm right, chasing each other in play. We dredged the area the next day, but no bodies came up. All I can assume is that they were just lost souls who finally met up with each other, finally enjoying a little company after so long searching in the dark. My last encounter was 2 years ago. Since then, I've mostly retired to life as a desk jockey, taking my leave of having to wander the muck out there. It was bright out midday, and I was out doing some land survey work to make sure local wildlife wasn't being overtaken by some invasive flora we'd had popping up. I was near one of the nicer outposts, this one with some air conditioning and a couple of amenities for anyone that needed them, when I decided to take a break for lunch. Considering fall was coming, I decided to eat my lunch out on the platform and look out at everything. Nature out here was beautiful, with every shade of green imaginable playing off the sunlight high in the sky. Think I ended up sitting there for an hour after I finished eating, just taking in the peace of it all and watching alligators float lazily along in the water beyond. I was zoning out, looking at one of the nearby tree banks a couple dozen meters away, when it began walking through the background where I was staring. This thing was tall, hell, even taller than the mosquito creature at around 12 feet by my best estimation. It was built like a 10-ton brick shithouse too. Damn thing looked like it could lift a truck if it needed to. Dark brown fur was matted up and down its body, with small beady eyes staring out above an elongated snout. Ferocious teeth curled down out of its lip from top and bottom, saliva dripping from them as it traversed the mud across the way. I could see sharp claws gripping trees as it hopped from bank to bank, leaving deep furrows in the bark as it went. I don't know if I made a sound or if it just smelled me, but it stopped dead in its tracks and turned, looking right at me. A howl like I've never heard before ripped through the air before it tore into the water, splashing toward me on the platform. I was up and inside so fast I shook the entire outpost when I slammed the door, and it shook the whole place again when it bashed up against it. I pulled the deadbolt and chain on the door, hoping to whatever god there was that it wouldn't break through. It kept beating at the door, terrible claws ripping at the other side trying to get in. I don't know what it wanted with me or if I was just unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The beating on the door stopped suddenly, heavy plodding footfalls walking around the outpost platform looking for another way in. I didn't have any time to waste. Staying out here as long as I had taught me that sometimes it was best to defend myself first, no matter what danger it posed to the wildlife. I ran toward the gun locker, pulling out the pump shotgun inside and loading in 2 shells before cocking it. The monster threw itself against the opposite wall from me, desperately trying to break it down to get in. I could hear the ferocious growls constantly, like a rabid dog desperately trying to bite whoever would come near enough. It was about to pass in front of the window now, and I knew I only had one chance to get this right or I may die out here. I raised the gun to my shoulder, taking aim square at the window and holding my breath, finger on the trigger. The creature suddenly ran from the side, slamming a massive claw against the window to break it open. As it began climbing through to get me, I fired off the first shot, catching it right in the left shoulder. I pumped the gun again, pulling it back up to my throbbing shoulder. The kickback on this thing was more than I was used to, and I was going to be sore for the next damn week afterwards. It still tried coming at me again, but I fired off the second shell, quickly ejecting it and pulling more out to reload. The shot peppered the thing right in the face, blowing off some of the skin around its skull. Despite all that, eye now staring at me, unable to close and half of its mouth fixed in a wicked snarl, tears of flesh hanging from the side, it turned tail and ran off. Explaining the broken window and huge gashes on the door was surprisingly easy. We all had an understanding at this point that weird shit happens out there, and sometimes the place just needed some repairs when wildlife got uppity or bad weather happened. Most of the official expense reports mentioned bad weather, but on occasion we would have fun with them, making up random bullshit to send off to the state auditors. Not like they were going to come out here and check on it themselves. I haven't seen the damned son of a bitch since, thank God. I have heard some of the younger rangers tell tales of howling late at night, and seeing a massive creature walking through the trees, just beyond the shadows of what they could see. Shining a light on it only causes bright green eyes to reflect back when they see it, and that's usually all it takes for them to turn tail and run. I still work here, but like I said, I stick to the desk jobs now. The younger folk can go out and deal with all the craziness the Okefenokee has to offer. I'll stay right here in the air conditioning. In the summer of 2016, my boyfriend at the time, and now my husband, and I decided to go camping in eastern Pennsylvania. We wanted to get away from the noise of the city for a few days. No phones, no internet, no people, just woods, rain, and silence. The campsite we chose was extremely primitive. Camping there was free. There was absolutely no cell service, and the road leading into the forest was barely paved. The deeper we drove, the more isolated everything became. Houses disappeared first, then traffic, then even the electrical lines vanished. Eventually, it felt like the forest had swallowed the entire world behind us. At first, it was beautiful, but some places give you a strange feeling the moment you arrive, like they don't want you there. About 20 minutes after entering the forest road, we saw the first strange thing. An old pickup truck was parked on the side of the road with the hood open. A woman stood beside it waiting. At least I assumed she was waiting for help. Normally, my boyfriend never hesitated to stop for stranded people, especially in isolated areas like that, but this time he slowed down for only a second before driving past her. I asked why he didn't stop. He kept his eyes on the road and quietly said, "I don't know. Something felt wrong." I laughed a little and told him he was being paranoid, but he stayed serious. Then, after a long silence, he added, "People who actually need help usually look relieved when they see another car." She didn't look relieved. She looked like she expected us. That sentence stayed in my head much longer than I wanted it to. We eventually found a relatively dry clearing near the trees and decided to set up camp there. The ground was muddy from the rain, and there were tire tracks everywhere from people driving through earlier in the week. but the area itself felt isolated enough to be peaceful. While we were unpacking our gear, a car slowly drove past us. A few minutes later, it passed again, then again. At first, I didn't think much of it, but my boyfriend suddenly stopped what he was doing and said, "That's the same car." I looked toward the road through the trees and caught a glimpse of headlights disappearing around the bend. "Maybe he's looking for a campsite too," I said, but my boyfriend shook his head. "Every time he passes, he's staring directly at us." For a few minutes we considered packing up and leaving, but the roads were muddy enough that if someone really wanted to find us, they could probably just follow our tire tracks anyway. Besides, the car eventually stopped coming back and the forest became quiet again, so we stayed. For the rest of the evening, everything actually felt normal. We made a fire, cooked hot dogs, drank coffee, and joked around while the rain slowly faded away. But once the sun disappeared completely, the atmosphere changed. During the day, the forest looked beautiful. At night, it looked alive. The trees became giant black shapes surrounding us from every direction. The silence felt unnatural. There were no insects, no owls, no wind, nothing. It honestly felt like the woods were holding their breath. Around midnight, we climbed into the tent and eventually fell asleep. Then sometime around 3 a.m., we woke up instantly to the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life. Even now, I can't properly describe it. My boyfriend later said it reminded him of a machine gun firing somewhere deep in the woods. But at the same time, it also sounded metallic, like a giant shovel being dragged violently across gravel through a loudspeaker. It was wrong. That's the only word I can use, and the sound echoed through the trees so loudly that I felt it in my chest. My boyfriend sat up immediately and looked out the small tent window, trying to see something in the darkness. Then the sound came again, closer. I was too terrified to even speak. He kept staring outside for several seconds before whispering, "I don't see anything." But the way he whispered made everything worse. If the sound was really far away like he later claimed, why was he whispering? The noise happened a third time, longer this time. Then silence. Complete silence. I suddenly became hyper-aware of every tiny sound outside the tent. Every soft movement in the leaves sounded like footsteps circling us. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding inside my ears. We laid there for what felt like forever before my boyfriend quietly leaned toward me and whispered, "Put your clothes on. We're leaving." The fear in his voice hit me harder than the sound itself. Then I watched him unzip one of our bags and pull out the machete we had bought specifically for the trip. I still remember the soft sound of plastic sliding off the blade in the darkness. He slowly opened the tent. The moonlight outside was strangely bright, casting pale silver light through the trees. The forest looked dead, empty, but it didn't feel empty. We packed everything as fast as we could, throwing gear into the car without organizing any of it. Neither of us spoke above a whisper. Then, right before getting into the car, I noticed something beside our extinguished campfire. A beer can. I froze. That wasn't there before. My boyfriend turned and stared at it for several seconds without saying a word. We hadn't brought any alcohol with us, and nobody had come down that road for hours, which meant someone had walked directly into our campsite while we were asleep. Someone had stood only a few feet away from our tent in the middle of the night. Maybe while we were awake listening to those sounds, maybe while we were whispering to each other in fear. We got into the car immediately and locked the doors for a few horrible seconds. The engine wouldn't start. I remember genuinely thinking we were going to die there. Then finally the car started. We sped down the muddy road as fast as we could, branches scraping against the sides of the vehicle, while the headlights barely cut through the darkness. After several minutes of silence, my boyfriend finally admitted something. When he first heard the sound, he didn't think it was far away at all. He thought it was very close. He just didn't want to scare me. He also admitted that he had expected someone to siphon gas from our car while we slept. That was part of the reason he didn't want us immediately running out of the tent after the noise started. He thought someone might have been trying to lure us outside. We eventually joked about it later, saying our hybrid car probably saved us because even if someone had drained the gas tank, the battery alone might have gotten us far enough to escape. But honestly, we were terrified. Even after reaching the highway, our hands were still shaking from adrenaline. For the rest of that trip, we only stayed at crowded campsites or hotels, and even now, years later, the thing that haunts me most isn't the sound in the woods, it isn't the woman by the truck or the car that kept driving past us, it's that cold beer can sitting beside the fire. Proof that someone stood in our campsite, in the middle of the night, quietly watching us sleep.